It was February 15th, 2026, at 2:47 a.m. when a crushing weight of spiritual burden I couldn't shake drove me to a rocky outcrop in the mountain wilderness 3 hours from my home, and there, surrounded by jagged granite formations that rose like ancient sentinels against a sky so thick with stars it looked like someone had shattered diamonds across black velvet, Jesus appeared before me with tears streaming down his face and spoke words that shattered everything I thought I understood about the next 7 days. Not everyone who sees this message is meant to see it. Some will scroll past, some will ignore it, but you've been marked. I need you to understand something before I go any further. I'm Jonathan Roumie. I've had the profound honor of portraying Jesus in The Chosen, and that experience has changed my life in ways I'm still discovering. But what happened to me on that mountain outcrop wasn't acting, it wasn't imagination, it wasn't the result of method preparation or character study. What I'm about to share with you happened in the physical realm, in a place so remote that the only sounds were the wind whistling through the rock formations and the occasional cry of a night bird echoing across the canyon below. Before I continue, I need to ask you something. If you're watching this right now, if you've made it this far, there's a reason. You've been marked, you've been chosen to receive this message, and I need you to do something for me. Leave your prayer requests in the comments below. I don't care how impossible your situation seems. I don't care how long you've been waiting. Leave it there, because what Jesus showed me on that mountain applies directly to what you're walking through right now. And if you're a true believer, not someone who just calls themselves a Christian on Sunday, but someone who genuinely wants to know what God is saying in this hour, subscribe to this channel, hit that notification bell, because what I'm about to share over these next 4 parts will challenge everything you think you know about how God moves and what he's doing right now in this moment in your life. The temperature on that mountain was 38 degrees. I could see my breath crystallizing in the air before me, small clouds of vapor that disappeared into the darkness. I'd driven through the night, unable to sleep, unable to rest, feeling a pull in my spirit that was so strong it was almost physical. Have you ever felt that? That sense that God is calling you to a specific place at a specific time, and if you don't obey, you'll miss something crucial? I'd grabbed my heavy jacket, a flashlight, and nothing else. No script, no preparation. No idea what I was walking into. The trail up to that rocky outcrop was treacherous in the darkness. My flashlight beam cut through the blackness, illuminating patches of loose gravel and twisted roots that seemed to reach up from the earth like gnarled fingers. The wind had picked up as I climbed higher, carrying with it the scent of pine and something else, something clean and sharp that I couldn't quite identify. The air was thinner up there, and each breath felt like it was filling my lungs with ice. When I finally reached the outcrop, I stood there for a moment, my heart pounding, partly from the climb, partly from something else, something I couldn't name yet. The view was breathtaking. Below me, the mountain wilderness stretched out in layers of shadow and starlight. Distant peaks rose like waves on a frozen ocean. Above me, the Milky Way stretched across the sky in a river of light so bright I could actually see colors in it. Blues and purples and golds that seemed to pulse with their own inner radiance. I'd come up there to pray, to seek God's face, to ask him about the burden I'd been carrying for weeks, this sense that something significant was coming, something that would affect not just me, but everyone who would hear this message. I knelt down on the cold stone, feeling the rough granite bite into my knees even through my jeans. I closed my eyes and began to pray. Father, I don't understand what you're trying to tell me. I don't understand this weight I'm carrying. Please show me. Speak to me. I'm listening. The wind died. Completely. One moment it had been howling through the rocks, and the next there was absolute silence. Not the silence of absence, but the silence of presence. The kind of silence that's so full it presses against your eardrums. I opened my eyes, and he was there. Jesus stood 10 feet in front of me, his form somehow both solid and radiant at the same time. He was wearing simple robes that moved slightly even though there was no wind. His face, oh, his face. I've studied that face for years, trying to portray it, trying to understand it, but seeing it in reality, seeing the actual face of the Son of God, was like comparing a photograph of the sun to standing in its full light. But what stopped my heart wasn't his presence, it was his tears. They were streaming down his face, catching the starlight, leaving trails of light on his cheeks. His eyes, those eyes that held all the love and all the sorrow of eternity, were fixed on me with an intensity that made me want to look away and never look away, both at the same time. Jonathan, he said, and his voice was like nothing I can adequately describe. It was gentle and thunderous. It was a whisper and a shout. It resonated not just in my ears, but in my chest, in my bones, in the very core of who I am. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. I could barely breathe. Do you know why I'm weeping? He asked. I shook my head, tears now streaming down my own face. He gestured, and suddenly the air around us shimmered. The rocky outcrop was still there, the stars were still above us, but now I could see something else. Images, visions, scenes playing out in the air like windows into other places, other moments. I saw a woman sitting at her kitchen table at 3 a.m., her head in her hands, bills spread out before her. She was praying, but her prayer was mechanical, hopeless. God, if you're there, I need help, but I know you probably won't answer. You never do. I saw a man in a hospital waiting room, his wife in surgery. He was staring at his phone, scrolling through social media, anything to distract himself from praying because he was afraid that if he prayed and God didn't answer, it would confirm what he secretly believed, that God didn't care. I saw a teenager in her bedroom, worship music playing softly, her Bible open in front of her. But she was crying because she'd been praying for her father's salvation for 3 years, and nothing had changed. Nothing ever changed. Do you see them? Jesus asked, his voice breaking. Do you see my children? Yes, I whispered. They've been marked, he said. And the way he said that word, marked, it sent chills down my spine. Every single person who will watch this message has been marked, but they don't understand what that means. They think it means I've forgotten them. They think it means their prayers have hit a ceiling. They think the next 7 days will be just like the last 7 days, and the 7 days before that, and the 7 days before that. He stepped closer to me, and I could feel the heat radiating from him, cutting through the cold mountain air. But they're wrong, he said, and now his voice carried an edge of something fierce, something powerful. The next 7 days are not like any 7 days they've experienced before. I am moving, I am answering, I am breaking through barriers that have stood for years, for decades, for generations. But if they don't understand what it means to be marked, if they don't understand what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, they will miss it. They will miss their moment. The visions around us intensified. I saw the same woman at her kitchen table, but now it was 7 days later. She was opening an envelope, her hand shaking. Inside was a check, an unexpected refund, a forgotten account, something that covered her exact need to the penny. But instead of rejoicing, instead of recognizing God's hand, she shrugged and said, "Lucky timing." She missed it. I saw the man in the hospital waiting room. 7 days later, his wife was recovering, the surgery a complete success. The doctors called it remarkable, but he attributed it to medical skill, to chance, to anything but the God who had been orchestrating events behind the scenes while he scrolled through his phone. He missed it. I saw the teenager 7 days later. Her father had called her out of the blue, wanting to talk, his heart softening in ways he couldn't explain. But she was too hurt, too tired of hoping, and she let the call go to voicemail. She missed it. No, I said, the word torn from my chest. No, Jesus, why? Why would they miss it? He knelt down beside me on the rocky outcrop, and suddenly I was aware again of where we were, this high, remote place, surrounded by ancient stone and infinite sky. He placed his hand on the granite between us, and I watched as the stone beneath his palm began to glow with a soft, warm light. Because they don't understand what it means to be marked, he said. They think being marked means being cursed. They think it means being forgotten. They think it means being passed over. But Jonathan, when I mark someone, when I set my seal upon them, it means the exact opposite. He lifted his hand, and where his palm had rested, there was now an impression in the stone, not carved, but somehow burned into the granite itself. It was a symbol I'd never seen before, intricate and beautiful, glowing with that same warm light. When I mark someone, he continued, it means I have chosen them for a specific purpose in a specific season. It means I have been preparing something for them that required time, that required waiting, that required the exact alignment of circumstances that only I could orchestrate. It means that what I'm about to do in their life is so significant, so precisely timed, that if they miss it, they won't just miss a blessing, they'll miss their assignment. The wind suddenly returned, but it was different now. It was warm, carrying with it the scent of something like incense, like myrrh. It swirled around us, and the stars above seemed to pulse in rhythm with it. The next 7 days, Jesus said, standing now, his form seeming to grow larger, more radiant, are not ordinary days. They are marked days, set apart, holy. I have been moving pieces into position like a master chess player, and now, in the next 7 days, Those pieces are going to move. Prayers that have seemed unanswered are going to be answered. Doors that have seemed locked are going to swing open. Relationships that have seemed dead are going to breathe again. Finances that have seemed cursed are going to be blessed. Health that has seemed hopeless is going to be restored. But, I started to say, but, he interrupted, his voice firm, only for those who understand what it means to be marked, only for those who are watching, only for those who are expecting, only for those who recognize my hand when I move. He turned and walked to the edge of the outcrop, looking out over the vast wilderness below. I stood and followed him, my legs shaking. "Do you see this landscape?" he asked, gesturing to the mountains and valleys spread out before us. "Every rock, every tree, every creature living in these mountains, I know them, I place them, I sustain them. Not one sparrow falls without my knowledge. Not one stone shifts without my awareness." He turned to look at me, and the intensity in his eyes made me take a step back. How much more do I know every detail of the lives of my children? How much more have I been working, moving, arranging, preparing, but they've stopped watching, they've stopped expecting, they've let disappointment and delay convince them that I'm not moving at all. Another vision opened in the air beside us. I saw a man, middle-aged, tired-looking, sitting in his car in a parking lot. He was praying, but his prayer was bitter. "God, I've been faithful, I've tithed, I've served, I've done everything right, and you've given me nothing. I'm done hoping, I'm done believing, I'm done." Jesus' tears returned, flowing freely now. "He's 7 days away," Jesus whispered. 7 days away from the breakthrough he's been praying for since he was a teenager. 7 days away from the door opening that will change everything. But he's about to give up, he's about to walk away, and if he does, if he stops watching, if he stops believing, he will miss the very thing I've been preparing for him for 30 years. The vision shifted. I saw the same man, but now he was 7 days in the future. He was standing in an office, shaking someone's hand, his face transformed with joy and disbelief. The opportunity he'd been praying for, training for, hoping for, it had finally come. But in the vision, I could see two versions of this moment. In one, he was there, receiving it, weeping with gratitude. In the other, the office was empty, the opportunity given to someone else because he had given up 3 days before it manifested. Which version becomes reality, Jesus said, depends on what he does in the next 7 days. It depends on whether he understands that he's been marked, whether he keeps watching, whether he keeps believing. The vision faded, and we were alone again on the rocky outcrop, the stars wheeling slowly above us, the mountains standing as silent witnesses to this encounter. "Jonathan," Jesus said, turning to face me fully, "I need you to tell them, I need you to tell everyone who watches this message that they've been marked, that the next 7 days are not ordinary days, that I'm moving in ways they cannot see yet, but they will see if they're watching, if they're expecting, if they refuse to let disappointment and delay steal their hope." "But how?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "How do they watch? How do they recognize your hand? How do they make sure they don't miss it?" He smiled then, and it was like the sun rising. "That," he said, "is what I'm going to show you tomorrow night. Meet me here again, same time, and I will show you exactly what to look for, exactly how to recognize my hand, exactly how to position yourself to receive what I've been preparing." The wind picked up again, stronger now, and the light radiating from him grew brighter and brighter until I had to close my eyes against it. When I opened them again, he was gone. I was alone on the rocky outcrop, the stars still blazing above me, the mountains still standing in their ancient silence. But the impression in the stone where he had placed his hand was still there, still glowing faintly in the darkness. I stood there for a long time, shaking, weeping, trying to process what I had just experienced. The cold had returned, biting through my jacket, but I barely felt it. All I could think about was his tears, his urgency, his message. "You've been marked. The next 7 days. Don't miss it." As I finally began the long climb back down the mountain, the first hints of dawn were beginning to touch the eastern horizon, and I knew with absolute certainty, that I would be back on that outcrop in less than 24 hours. Because this message wasn't just for me. It was for you. You who are watching this right now. You who have been praying and waiting and hoping and sometimes despairing. You who have wondered if God has forgotten you, if your prayers are hitting a ceiling, if anything is ever going to change. You've been marked, and the next 7 days are going to prove it, but you have to watch. You have to be ready. You have to understand what Jesus is going to reveal tomorrow night about how to recognize his hand when he moves. I'm going back to that mountain tonight, and tomorrow I'm going to share with you the second part of what he showed me, the specific signs to look for, the specific ways he's going to move, and the specific traps that will cause people to miss their moment even when it's right in front of them. Don't miss tomorrow's video. Your breakthrough may depend on it. It was 2:33 a.m. on February 16th, 2026, when I returned to that same rocky outcrop, and this time the mountain wilderness had transformed into something otherworldly. A thick mist had rolled in from the valleys below, filling the spaces between the peaks like a ghostly ocean, and the moon, 3/4 full and burning silver white, cast an ethereal glow across everything, turning the granite formations into sculptures of light and shadow. The temperature had dropped to 29 degrees, cold enough that ice crystals were forming on the exposed rock faces, catching the moonlight and glittering like scattered jewels. I'd barely slept after the previous night's encounter. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his tears. I heard his voice. I felt the weight of his message pressing against my chest like a physical thing. You've been marked. The next 7 days. Don't miss it. I'd spent the entire day in a state of heightened awareness, watching, praying, asking God to prepare my heart for whatever he was going to reveal tonight. And now, as I stood on that same outcrop, my breath forming clouds in the freezing air, I felt that same presence beginning to build, that thickness in the atmosphere that told me I wasn't alone. The mist below me was moving in ways that mist shouldn't move. It was swirling, forming patterns, almost like it was alive. And then, just as it had the night before, the wind died completely. The silence descended like a blanket. And he was there. Jesus stood in the exact same spot as before, but tonight his appearance was different. He wasn't weeping. His face was set with determination, with purpose, with an intensity that made the air around him seem to vibrate. The moonlight seemed to bend toward him, as if even the natural light recognized its creator and bowed in his presence. You came back, he said, and there was approval in his voice. I had to, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Lord, I haven't been able to stop thinking about what you showed me. Those people, the woman at her kitchen table, the man in the hospital, the teenager, the man in the parking lot. Did they make it? Did they hold on? He gestured, and once again the air shimmered. But this time, instead of showing me visions of people, he showed me something else. The mist below us suddenly cleared in a circular pattern, like someone had drawn back a curtain, and I could see down into the valley. But what I saw wasn't just the physical landscape. I was seeing into the spiritual realm. The valley was filled with light, thousands, maybe millions of points of light like fireflies, each one pulsing with its own rhythm. They were scattered across the landscape as far as I could see, some bright, some dim, some flickering, some steady. What am I seeing? I asked. Prayers, Jesus said. Every point of light is a prayer that has been spoken by one of my children. Some are new, spoken just tonight. Some are old, spoken years ago, decades ago. But every single one is still alive. Every single one is still before my Father's throne. Not one has been forgotten. Not one has been ignored. I stared at the sea of lights, overwhelmed. There were so many prayers, so many hopes, so many desperate pleas for help, for healing, for breakthrough, for intervention. But look closer, Jesus said, and suddenly my vision sharpened. I could see that some of the lights were moving. They were rising up from the valley floor, ascending, growing brighter as they climbed. And they were all moving in the same direction, toward a specific point on the horizon where the sky seemed to be glowing with a golden radiance. What's happening to them? I asked. They're being answered, Jesus said simply. Right now, in this moment, the circumstances are aligning, the people are being positioned, the resources are being released, the hearts are being softened, the doors are being opened. Everything that needs to happen for those prayers to manifest in the physical realm is happening right now. I watched in awe as more and more lights began to rise, joining the stream of ascending prayers. It was beautiful. It was overwhelming. But look there, Jesus said, his voice suddenly heavy with sorrow. He pointed, and I saw what he was showing me. There were other lights, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, that were also rising, also being answered, but they were flickering, fading, and as I watched, some of them went out completely, falling back to the valley floor like dying stars. What's happening to those? I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. Those are the prayers that are being answered, Jesus said, but the people who prayed them have stopped watching, they've stopped believing, they've given up. And so even though I'm moving, even though I'm answering, even though their breakthrough is literally days away, sometimes hours away, they will miss it because they're not looking for it anymore. He turned to face me, and the anguish in his eyes was almost unbearable. Jonathan, this is what I need you to understand. This is what I need everyone who watches this message to understand. I am always moving. I am always working. I am always answering. But my children have been taught to look for my answers in the wrong way. They've been taught to expect instant manifestation. They've been taught that if they don't see immediate results, it means I'm not moving. And so they give up right before the breakthrough. The vision of the valley faded, and we were back on the rocky outcrop, surrounded by mist and moonlight and ancient stone. Jesus walked to the edge, and I followed him. Below us, the mist was still swirling in those strange, purposeful patterns. "Do you see this mist?" he asked. "Yes, Lord. It's been forming all day. The temperature had to drop to a specific degree. The humidity had to reach a specific level. The wind patterns had to shift in a specific way. All of these things had to align perfectly for this mist to form at this exact time in this exact place. If any one of those factors had been different, the mist wouldn't be here." He turned to look at me. "This is how I answer prayers, Jonathan. I'm not a vending machine where you put in a prayer and immediately get out a blessing. I'm the creator of the universe, orchestrating billions of variables across time and space to bring about the perfect answer at the perfect time. And the next 7 days, these specific 7 days, are when countless variables are finally aligning, when the temperature is finally right, when the humidity is finally right, when the wind is finally shifting, when the mist is finally forming." He reached out and touched the mist, and where his fingers made contact, it glowed with that same warm light I'd seen the night before. "But if my children aren't watching," he continued, "if they aren't expecting, if they've given up because they think the conditions will never be right, they'll miss the very thing I've been preparing. They'll sleep through their miracle. They'll scroll past their breakthrough. They'll dismiss their answer as coincidence." Another vision opened, but this time it was more detailed, more specific. I saw a woman, different from the one I'd seen the night before. She was in her late 50s, sitting in a small apartment, looking at a letter. It was an eviction notice. She had 30 days to come up with 3 months' back rent, or she'd be homeless. I watched as she fell to her knees and prayed. "God, I don't know what to do. I've been faithful. I've tithed even when I couldn't afford it. I've served in the church. I've done everything I know to do. Please, please help me. I need a miracle." The vision fast-forwarded. I saw her 3 days later, checking her mail. There was a letter from a law firm. She opened it, read it, and her hands began to shake. It was notification that a distant relative she'd never met had passed away and left her a small inheritance. Not a fortune, but enough to cover her back rent and give her a cushion for several months. But instead of falling to her knees in gratitude, instead of recognizing God's hand, I watched as she said, "Well, that's convenient timing. I guess I got lucky." She missed it. "No," I said, the word exploding from me. "No, Jesus, why? Why didn't she see it? Why didn't she recognize your hand?" "Because she wasn't watching for it," he said. She prayed for a miracle, but in her mind, a miracle looked like money falling from the sky. It looked like a stranger knocking on her door with a check. It looked like something dramatic and obvious and impossible to miss. She wasn't watching for me to move through natural means, through legal processes, through the death of a relative she'd never met. She wasn't watching for the mist to form. She was watching for the lightning bolt. He waved his hand, and the vision changed. Now I saw the same woman, but in a different timeline. In this version, when she opened the letter from the law firm, she fell to her knees weeping. "Thank you, Jesus. Thank you. I knew you would answer. I knew you were working. I just couldn't see it yet. But you were there all along, weren't you? Orchestrating this, preparing this, moving pieces into position." In this version, her gratitude opened something. I watched as her recognition of God's hand created a shift in the spiritual realm. More lights began to rise from around her. More prayers began to be answered. Her testimony led others to faith. Her story encouraged someone else to keep believing. Her breakthrough became a catalyst for multiple breakthroughs. "Do you see the difference?" Jesus asked. "Same situation, same answer, same provision. But in one timeline, she missed it and it ended there. In the other timeline, she recognized my hand, and it became a beginning. It became a testimony. It became a catalyst for more miracles. The vision faded, and he turned to face me fully. This is what I need you to tell them, Jonathan. In the next 7 days, I am moving in their lives. I am answering prayers. I am opening doors. I am providing solutions. But they need to be watching for the mist, not just the lightning bolt. They need to recognize my hand in the natural circumstances, not just in the supernatural manifestations. But how? I asked, frustrated. How do they know the difference between your hand and just random coincidence? How do they know when something is you moving versus just life happening? He smiled, and it was a teacher's smile, patient, knowing, preparing to reveal something important. That's exactly the right question, he said. And the answer is simpler than they think, but it requires something most of my children have stopped doing. He walked back to the center of the outcrop, to the spot where he'd placed his hand the night before. The impression was still there, still glowing faintly. He knelt beside it and gestured for me to kneel as well. When I mark someone, he said, I don't just mark them for blessing. I mark them for relationship. The mark is not a one-way seal. It's a two-way connection. It means that when I move in their life, they can sense it. They can feel it. They can recognize it, but only if they're connected, only if they're in communication, only if they're maintaining the relationship. He placed his hand over the glowing impression, and suddenly I felt it, a warmth that started in my chest and spread through my entire body. It was like being plugged into a power source, like being tuned to a frequency I hadn't known existed. This is what most of my children are missing, he said. They pray, but they don't listen. They ask, but they don't wait for my response. They present their requests, but they don't maintain the connection. And so when I move, when I answer, when I orchestrate circumstances on their behalf, they don't recognize it because they're not tuned to my frequency anymore. Another vision opened, but this one was different. I saw a man, young, maybe early 30s, sitting in his car before work. He was praying, but it wasn't a desperate, pleading prayer. It was a conversation. He was talking to Jesus like Jesus was sitting in the passenger seat, telling him about his day, asking for wisdom, listening for responses, and I could see, actually see, a golden thread connecting his heart to heaven, pulsing with light, alive with communication. Then I watched as his day unfolded. He went into work. He had a meeting. During the meeting, someone mentioned a project, and suddenly he felt a nudge, a gentle prompting in his spirit. Pay attention to this. This is important. He listened to the nudge. He asked a question, and that question led to a conversation that led to an opportunity that led to the promotion he'd been praying for. But here's what struck me. The opportunity didn't look like an opportunity at first. It looked like just another meeting, just another project, just another day. If he hadn't been tuned to God's frequency, if he hadn't felt that nudge and recognized it as God's voice, he would have missed it completely. That's it, Jesus said, watching my face as understanding dawned. That's the key. The next 7 days are full of moments like that, moments that look ordinary but are actually divine appointments, conversations that seem random but are actually orchestrated, circumstances that appear coincidental but are actually my hand moving. But only those who are connected, only those who are tuned to my frequency, only those who are maintaining the relationship will recognize them. The vision faded, and the cold mountain air rushed back in, reminding me of where I was. The mist below us had thickened, and now it was glowing with the moonlight, creating an otherworldly landscape that looked like something from a dream. Jonathan, Jesus said, his voice taking on that urgent tone again, I need you to understand how critical the next 7 days are. This isn't just about individual breakthroughs, though those are important. This is about a shift that's happening in the spiritual realm. For months, I've been breaking down barriers. I've been dismantling obstacles. I've been preparing the way. And now in these next 7 days, there's a window opening. A specific window of time when the resistance is at its lowest, when the breakthrough is at its closest, when the answers are at their most accessible. He stood, and I stood with him. The wind was beginning to pick up again, but it was warm now, impossibly warm for the freezing temperature. It swirled around us, and I could smell that same scent from the night before, myrrh and something else, something like rain on hot stone. But here's what the enemy doesn't want them to know, Jesus continued, his voice rising with intensity. The enemy has been working overtime to distract my children during these exact 7 days, to discourage them, to make them give up right before the breakthrough, to fill their minds with doubt and their hearts with despair, to get them to stop watching, stop praying, stop believing right when they need to be most alert. He pointed down into the valley, and I saw something that made my blood run cold. Among the lights, the prayers rising and being answered, there were dark shapes moving, shadows that seemed to have substance, that were actively working to extinguish the lights, to push them back down, to keep them from rising. The enemy knows what I'm doing, Jesus said. He knows about the window, he knows about the shift, and he's throwing everything he has at my children to keep them from receiving what I've prepared. He's using disappointment from past delays. He's using fear about the future. He's using discouragement about their current circumstances. He's using distraction through entertainment, through busyness, through anything that will keep them from being present, from being watchful, from being connected. I watched as one of the lights, a prayer that had been rising steadily, suddenly flickered as one of the dark shapes wrapped around it. The light dimmed, slowed, began to fall back. "What happens if they give up?" I asked, my voice tight. "What happens if the enemy succeeds?" Jesus' face was grave. "Then they miss their window," he said. "The breakthrough will still come eventually. I'm faithful to my promises. But it might be months from now, years from now. And in the meantime, they'll go through struggles and hardships that they didn't have to go through. They'll face battles that could have been avoided. They'll walk through valleys that they could have bypassed, not because I'm punishing them, but because they missed the appointed time. They missed the moment when everything was aligned." He turned to me, and I saw tears forming in his eyes again. "Do you understand what I'm saying, Jonathan? I'm not playing games with my children. I'm not withholding good things from them. I'm not making them jump through hoops. I've been working, moving, orchestrating, preparing, and now, in these next 7 days, everything is ready. The table is set. The door is open. The way is clear. But they have to walk through it. They have to recognize it. They have to be watching for it." The wind intensified, and the mist below us began to glow brighter. The stars above seemed to pulse in rhythm with my heartbeat, and Jesus raised his hands, and his voice became like thunder. "Tell them," he said. "Tell them to wake up. Tell them to tune in. Tell them to start watching. Tell them that every conversation in the next 7 days might be a divine appointment. Every email might contain their answer. Every phone call might be me moving. Every coincidence might be my hand orchestrating circumstances. Tell them to stop looking for the lightning bolt and start watching for the mist. Tell them to stop waiting for the dramatic and start recognizing the divine in the ordinary." He lowered his hands, and the intensity eased slightly, but his eyes remained locked on mine. "And tell them this," he said, his voice softer now but no less urgent. "Tell them that I know it's been hard. I know they're tired. I know they've been disappointed before. I know they've prayed and waited and hoped and felt like nothing changed. I know. I see every tear. I hear every prayer. I feel every heartbreak. But this time is different. These 7 days are different. The window is open. The shift is happening. And if they'll just hold on, if they'll just keep watching, if they'll just stay connected, they're going to see me move in ways that will leave them speechless." I was weeping now, the tears freezing on my cheeks in the cold air, because I knew with absolute certainty, that this message wasn't just for some abstract audience. It was for specific people. People who were watching this right now, people who had been on the verge of giving up, people who had been praying for years and were tired of waiting. "There's more," Jesus said, and his voice took on a warning tone. "Tomorrow night, I'm going to show you what happens to those who miss their window. I'm going to show you the consequences of not watching, of not recognizing my hand, of giving up right before the breakthrough. It's not going to be comfortable. It's not going to be easy to hear, but it's necessary, because the stakes are too high for people to miss this message." He began to fade, the light around him growing brighter even as his form became less distinct. "Meet me here tomorrow night," he said, "same time, and bring a heart prepared to see hard truths, because what I'm going to show you will break your heart, but it will also save lives. It will also rescue breakthroughs. It will also prevent tragedies." The light became blinding, and I had to close my eyes. When I opened them, he was gone. But the warmth remained, the sense of his presence lingered, and the glowing impression in the stone was brighter than ever, pulsing like a heartbeat. I stood there on that rocky outcrop for another hour, watching the mist swirl below me, watching the stars wheel overhead, feeling the weight of what I'd been shown settling into my bones. And I knew that tomorrow night was going to change everything. If you're watching this, if you've made it this far, I need you to do something. I need you to make a decision right now. For the next 7 days, starting today, I need you to commit to being watchful, to being present, to being connected. I need you to commit to having at least one conversation with Jesus every day where you're not just talking but listening, where you're not just presenting requests but tuning in to his frequency because he's moving right now in your life. And the next 7 days are critical. Don't miss your window. Tomorrow night, I'm going to share the third part of this encounter, the part that shows what happens when people miss their moment. It's going to be hard to hear, but it's going to be necessary. Make sure you're here for it. Your breakthrough might depend on it. It was 2:51 a.m. on February 17th, 2026, when I climbed back up to that rocky outcrop for the third night, and I was terrified. The mountain wilderness had transformed yet again. A storm was building in the distance, lightning flickering inside massive thunderheads that towered like mountains themselves against the night sky, and the wind that whipped across the granite formations carried the electric smell of ozone and coming rain. The temperature had risen to 43 degrees, unseasonably warm, and the air felt thick, heavy, pregnant with something about to break loose. I hadn't wanted to come back tonight. That sounds terrible to admit, doesn't it? That I didn't want to meet with Jesus. But after what he'd said the night before, about showing me what happens when people miss their window, about revealing the consequences of not watching, I was afraid. Afraid of what I'd see, afraid of what I'd feel, afraid of the weight of responsibility that came with carrying this message. But I came anyway, because some things are more important than comfort, some truths are more important than ease, and if what Jesus was going to show me tonight could prevent even one person from missing their breakthrough, then whatever discomfort I felt was worth it. The climb up had been harder tonight. The wind kept pushing against me as if trying to turn me back. Twice I'd slipped on loose gravel, catching myself at the last second. My flashlight beam seemed weaker somehow, swallowed up by the darkness that pressed in from all sides. And the whole time, I felt a resistance in my spirit, a heaviness that made each step feel like I was walking through water. When I finally reached the outcrop, I was breathing hard, my heart pounding. The view was apocalyptic. Below me, the valleys were hidden in complete darkness. No mist tonight, no moonlight, just an abyss of blackness that seemed to swallow everything. Above me, those massive storm clouds were rolling closer, the lightning inside them creating brief, stark illuminations that turned the landscape into a nightmare of shadows and harsh light. I knelt on the cold stone, in the same spot I'd knelt the previous 2 nights, and I prayed, "Father, I'm here. I'm scared, but I'm here. Show me what you need to show me. Give me the strength to see it. Give me the words to share it. And please, please, let it make a difference." The wind didn't die this time. Instead, it intensified, howling through the rock formations with a sound like voices crying out. The temperature dropped suddenly, plummeting at least 10 degrees in a matter of seconds. And then, he was there. But Jesus looked different tonight. He was still radiant, still glorious, but there was something in his bearing that spoke of judgment. Not the harsh, condemning judgment of religion, but the righteous judgment of a king who sees everything, knows everything, and must speak truth even when that truth is painful. His eyes were red from weeping, but his jaw was set. His hands were clenched at his sides, and when he spoke, his voice carried the sound of the thunder rumbling in the distance. "Are you ready?" he asked. I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. "What I'm about to show you," he said, "is not to condemn. It's not to shame. It's not to discourage. It's to warn. It's to wake people up. It's to show them the reality of what's at stake when they miss their appointed time." He gestured, and the air around us exploded with visions. But these weren't the gentle, hopeful visions of the previous nights. These were harsh, painful, devastating. I saw the man from the parking lot, the one who had been 7 days away from his breakthrough. But in this vision, I was seeing what actually happened. I watched as he made his decision to give up. I watched as he drove home that night and deleted his prayer journal. I watched as he stopped going to church, stopped reading his Bible, stopped believing that God cared about his life. And then I watched as 7 days later, the phone call came, the opportunity he'd been praying for, the door he'd been asking God to open, but when they called, he didn't answer. He'd changed his number, burned his bridges, walked away from everything connected to his faith. The opportunity went to someone else, someone who had been watching, someone who had been ready, but that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was watching the ripple effects. I saw his children growing up without faith because their father had taught them through his actions that God doesn't answer prayers. I saw his wife struggling alone with her own faith journey because her partner had given up. I saw the people he would have mentored, the lives he would have touched, the kingdom impact he would have made. All of it unrealized, all of it lost, because he gave up 7 days too soon. No, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. Jesus, no, please. This is what happens, he said, his voice heavy with grief, when my children don't understand the times and seasons, when they don't recognize that they're in a window, when they give up right before the breakthrough. The vision shifted, and I saw the woman with the eviction notice, the one who had received the inheritance but dismissed it as coincidence. I watched as her life unfolded from that point. She paid her rent, yes. She had a few months of cushion, yes. But because she didn't recognize God's hand, because she didn't give him credit, because she missed the opportunity to let that moment transform her faith, she remained in the same cycle of barely surviving, of living paycheck to paycheck, of never quite breaking through to the abundance God had prepared for her. And I saw what could have been. In an alternate timeline, I watched as her recognition of God's provision opened her eyes to see his hand in other areas. I watched as her testimony encouraged others. I watched as her faith grew, and as her faith grew, she began to see more opportunities, more open doors, more divine connections. I watched as she moved from surviving to thriving, not because God loved her more in that timeline, but because she was watching for his hand and recognizing it when he moved. Same woman, Jesus said, same initial blessing, but two completely different outcomes based on one factor, whether she recognized my hand or dismissed it as coincidence. The visions kept coming, faster now, more intense. I saw person after person, situation after situation, breakthrough after breakthrough that was missed, dismissed, or ignored because people weren't watching, weren't expecting, weren't tuned in to God's frequency. I saw a woman who prayed for healing, and God orchestrated a series of events that led her to a specific doctor who had just developed a new treatment protocol. But she was so focused on wanting an instant, miraculous healing that she dismissed the doctor as just medicine and refused the treatment. 6 months later, the disease had progressed beyond what the treatment could address. I saw a man who prayed for a wife, and God brought a woman into his life through a chance encounter at a coffee shop. But he was so focused on his mental image of what his future wife should look like that he barely noticed her. She waited, hoping he'd ask her out, but he never did. She eventually married someone else. He remained alone, still praying for a wife, never realizing that God had already answered his prayer and he'd missed it. I saw a teenager who prayed for direction about college, and God spoke to her through a teacher's offhand comment about a specific program, but she was so convinced that God's guidance would come through some dramatic vision or prophetic word that she dismissed the teacher's comment as just conversation. She chose a different path, spent years in a career that left her unfulfilled, and always wondered why God never answered her prayer for direction. "Stop," I said, my voice breaking. "Please, Jesus, stop. I can't take anymore." The visions froze, hanging in the air around us like photographs of tragedy. "This is what I see," Jesus said, and his voice was raw with emotion. "Every day, every hour, every moment, I see my children missing their breakthroughs, missing their appointments, missing their moments, not because I'm withholding from them, not because I'm not moving, but because they're not watching. They're not recognizing my hand. They're so focused on what they think my answer should look like that they miss what my answer actually looks like." He walked through the frozen visions, touching each one gently, and I could see the love in his eyes even as tears streamed down his face. "Do you know what breaks my heart most?" he asked. "It's not that they miss the blessing. Blessings can come again. Opportunities can be recreated. I'm the God of second chances, third chances, infinite chances. What breaks my heart is that they go through unnecessary pain, unnecessary struggle, unnecessary hardship. They walk through valleys they didn't have to walk through. They fight battles they didn't have to fight. They carry burdens they didn't have to carry, all because they missed the appointed time when I had already prepared the way." Lightning flashed, closer now, and the thunder that followed shook the very stone beneath my feet. The storm was almost upon us. "But there's something else," Jesus said, turning to face me fully. "Something even more critical that I need you to understand. When someone misses their window, it doesn't just affect them. It affects everyone connected to them. Every breakthrough I orchestrate is designed to have a ripple effect. One person's healing is meant to encourage another person's faith. One person's provision is meant to inspire another person's generosity. One person's testimony is meant to spark another person's breakthrough." He waved his hand, and a new vision appeared. I saw a woman, middle-aged, worn down by life, sitting in a church service. She was on the verge of giving up on God, ready to walk away from her faith entirely. But then someone stood up to give a testimony. It was the woman from the earlier vision, the one who had recognized God's hand in the inheritance. She was sharing her story, weeping with gratitude, declaring God's faithfulness. And I watched as her testimony hit the other woman like a lightning bolt. I watched as hope rekindled in her eyes. I watched as she decided to hold on for one more week, one more day, one more hour. And I watched as that decision to hold on led to her own breakthrough 3 days later. Do you see? Jesus asked. One woman's recognition of my hand didn't just change her life. It saved another woman's faith. It prevented another tragedy. It created another testimony that would go on to encourage others. This is how my kingdom works. This is why it's so critical that people recognize my hand when I move, because their recognition doesn't just affect them, it affects everyone in their sphere of influence. The vision shifted again, and now I saw the alternate timeline, the one where the first woman had dismissed the inheritance as coincidence. I watched as she sat in that same church service, but this time she had no testimony to share. And I watched as the second woman, hearing no word of encouragement, no testimony of God's faithfulness, made the decision to walk away from her faith. And I watched as her walking away affected her children, her friends, her co-workers. I watched as the ripple effect of one missed recognition spread out like a disease, affecting dozens of lives, hundreds of lives. No, I said again, but this time it wasn't a plea for him to stop. It was a rejection of what I was seeing, a refusal to accept that this was how it had to be. Exactly, Jesus said, and there was fierce approval in his voice. No, this is not how it has to be. This is why I'm giving this message. This is why these next 7 days are so critical, because I'm moving, I'm answering, I'm orchestrating breakthroughs. And if my children will just watch, if they'll just recognize my hand, if they'll just stay connected, not only will they receive their breakthrough, but they'll become a catalyst for others' breakthroughs. They'll become a testimony that saves someone else's faith. They'll become a link in a chain of miracles that spreads far beyond what they can imagine. The storm broke. Rain began to fall, but it was warm rain, almost hot against my skin. The lightning was directly overhead now, illuminating the rocky outcrop in stark, brilliant flashes. And in those flashes, I could see Jesus more clearly than ever, the scars on his hands, the love in his eyes, the determination in his bearing. Listen to me carefully, he said, his voice rising above the sound of the storm. In the next 4 days, because 3 of the 7 have already passed, I am going to move in ways that will astound those who are watching. Prayers that have been ascending for years are about to be answered. Doors that have been locked for decades are about to swing open. Relationships that have been dead are about to breathe again. Finances that have been cursed are about to be blessed. Bodies that have been sick are about to be healed. Minds that have been tormented are about to find peace. He raised his hands, and the lightning seemed to respond, striking the peaks around us in a display that was both terrifying and glorious. But, and hear me clearly on this, these breakthroughs will not look the way most people expect them to look. They will come through natural means. They will come through ordinary circumstances. They will come through conversations and emails and phone calls and chance encounters. They will come through the mist, not the lightning bolt. And those who are not watching, those who are not tuned in, those who have given up or stopped believing, they will miss them. They will dismiss them. They will scroll past their miracle and never even know it. He lowered his hands, and the intensity of the storm eased slightly, though the rain continued to fall. This is the judgment, he said, and his voice was heavy with sorrow. Not that I withhold from those who don't watch, but that they miss what I've already provided. Not that I punish those who give up, but that they walk away from the table right before the feast is served. Not that I love them less, but that they don't recognize my love when I show it to them. He walked toward me, and I felt the heat radiating from him even through the warm rain. Jonathan, I need you to tell them something specific. I need you to tell them that the next 4 days are not the time to give up. They're not the time to quit. They're not the time to walk away. The next 4 days are the time to be more watchful than they've ever been, more expectant than they've ever been, more tuned in than they've ever been. He placed his hand on my shoulder, and I felt power surge through me. Not just physical power, but spiritual authority, the weight of a message that had to be delivered. Tell them to watch for these specific signs, he said. Tell them that in the next 4 days they're going to have conversations that seem random but are actually divine appointments. Tell them they're going to receive information that seems coincidental but is actually my orchestration. Tell them they're going to encounter people who seem like chance meetings but are actually strategic connections I've arranged. Tell them they're going to have thoughts and ideas that seem like their own creativity but are actually my wisdom being downloaded into their spirit. The rain was falling harder now, soaking through my clothes, but I didn't care. I was hanging on every word. And tell them this, he continued, his voice dropping to almost a whisper, though I could hear it clearly above the storm. Tell them that the enemy is going to work overtime in these next 4 days to distract them, to discourage them, to make them doubt, to fill their minds with fear and their hearts with despair. Tell them that every distraction, every discouragement, every doubt is a sign that they're close to their breakthrough. The enemy doesn't waste ammunition on people who aren't a threat. He only attacks those who are about to step into something significant. Lightning struck close, so close I could feel the electricity in the air, could smell the ozone, could see the afterimage burned into my retinas, and in that flash I saw something that made my breath catch. I saw myself, but not as I was in that moment. I saw myself in the future, sharing this message, and I saw the faces of the people watching, thousands of them, maybe tens of thousands. And I saw the moment when the message clicked for them, when understanding dawned, when hope rekindled. And I saw what happened next. I saw breakthroughs cascading like dominoes. I saw one person's recognition of God's hand leading to another person's faith being restored. I saw testimonies being shared that encouraged others to hold on. I saw a wave of miracles spreading out from this one message, affecting lives I would never meet, touching people in places I would never go. And I understood. I understood why Jesus had brought me to this mountain 3 nights in a row. I understood why he'd shown me the painful visions of missed opportunities. I understood why the message had to be delivered with such urgency. Because lives were hanging in the balance. Breakthroughs were waiting to be claimed. Miracles were ready to be released. And the next 4 days were the appointed time. Yes, Jesus said, seeing the understanding in my eyes. Now you see. Now you understand. This isn't just about individual blessings, though those matter. This is about a move of my spirit that's been building for months, for years. This is about a shift in the spiritual realm that's creating a window of opportunity. This is about a moment in time when heaven and earth are aligned in a way that makes breakthrough more accessible than it's been in a generation. He removed his hand from my shoulder and stepped back. Tomorrow night, he said, I'm going to give you the practical application. I'm going to tell you exactly what people need to do in these next 4 days to position themselves to receive their breakthrough. I'm going to give you the specific steps, the specific practices, the specific keys that will help them recognize my hand when I move. But tonight, I needed you to understand the stakes. I needed you to see what happens when people miss their moment. Because only when you understand what's at risk will you deliver this message with the urgency it requires. The storm was beginning to move past us now, the rain lightening, the thunder growing more distant, but the air still crackled with electricity, with power, with the sense that something significant had just occurred. Go home, Jesus said. Rest, process what you've seen, and tomorrow night, come back one final time, because what I'm going to give you tomorrow will be the key that unlocks everything. It will be the practical wisdom that turns this message from inspiration into transformation. He began to fade, but before he disappeared completely, he spoke one more time. And Jonathan, thank you. Thank you for being willing to see the hard things. Thank you for being willing to carry the heavy message. Thank you for being willing to be my voice in this hour. Your obedience is going to save lives. Your faithfulness is going to rescue breakthroughs. Your willingness to climb this mountain night after night is going to create a ripple effect that will touch more lives than you can imagine. Then he was gone. I stood there in the rain for a long time, weeping, shaking, overwhelmed by what I'd seen and heard. The storm had passed, and the sky was beginning to clear. In the east, the first hints of dawn were touching the horizon, turning the clouds pink and gold. And I knew with absolute certainty that tomorrow night's message was going to be the most important one yet. If you're watching this, if you've made it through this difficult message, I need you to hear me clearly. What Jesus showed me tonight wasn't meant to discourage you. It was meant to wake you up. It was meant to help you understand that the next 4 days are critical, that you're in a window, that breakthrough is closer than you think. But you have to be watching. You have to be expectant. You have to be tuned in. Don't give up. Not now. Not when you're this close. Tomorrow night, I'm going to share the final part of this encounter, the practical steps, the specific actions, the keys that will help you recognize God's hand when He moves in the next 4 days. It's going to be the most practical, most actionable message of this entire series. Make sure you're here for it, because your breakthrough is coming, but you have to be ready to recognize it when it arrives. I'll see you tomorrow night. It was 2:38 a.m. on February 18th, 2026, when I made the final climb up to that rocky outcrop in the mountain wilderness, and everything was different. The storm had passed completely, leaving behind an atmosphere so clear, so crystalline, that I could see individual stars and galaxies millions of light years away. The temperature had settled at a perfect 52 degrees, not cold, not warm, but perfectly comfortable, as if nature itself was holding its breath in anticipation. The moon was nearly full now, casting silver light across the granite formations, and everything, every rock, every shadow, every blade of grass clinging to the crevices, seemed to glow with an inner radiance. I was exhausted. 3 nights of intense spiritual encounters, 3 nights of climbing this mountain in the darkest hours, 3 nights of visions that had shaken me to my core. My body was screaming for rest, but my spirit was more alive than it had ever been, because I knew that tonight Jesus was going to give me the key, the practical application, the specific steps that would help people recognize His hand and receive their breakthrough in the next 4 days. The climb had been easier tonight. The path that had seemed treacherous and difficult the previous nights now felt familiar, almost welcoming. And as I climbed, I found myself praying differently than I had the other nights, not with fear or trepidation, but with anticipation, with expectancy, with a deep, settled knowing that what I was about to receive would change lives. When I reached the outcrop, I didn't kneel immediately. Instead, I stood at the edge, looking out over the vast wilderness spread before me. In the moonlight, I could see for miles, mountain ranges stacked upon mountain ranges, valleys filled with shadow, distant peaks touched with silver light. And I thought about all the people who would watch this message, all the people who were in their own valleys right now, their own dark nights, their own seasons of waiting. This message was for them. It's beautiful, isn't it? I turned, and Jesus was there. But tonight He looked different again. There was no sorrow in His face, no tears, no weight of judgment. Tonight He looked like a teacher who was about to reveal the solution to a problem his students had been struggling with. There was excitement in His eyes, anticipation, joy. "It is, Lord," I said. He walked over to stand beside me, looking out over the same view. "Do you know what I see when I look at this landscape?" he asked. "What, Lord?" "I see every detail," he said. "Every rock, every tree, every creature, every blade of grass. I see the water flowing underground that no human eye can detect. I see the roots of trees reaching deep into the earth. I see the movements of animals in the darkness. I see the wind patterns, the temperature shifts, the way the moonlight reflects off different surfaces. I see it all, simultaneously, in perfect detail." He turned to look at me. "This is how I see your life, Jonathan. This is how I see the lives of everyone who will watch this message. I see every detail, every circumstance, every relationship, every need, every prayer, every tear, every hope, every fear. I see it all, and I'm not just seeing it, I'm actively working in it, moving through it, orchestrating it, aligning it." He gestured back toward the center of the outcrop, and we walked together to the spot where he'd placed his hand that first night. The impression was still there, still glowing, but now it was pulsing with a steady, rhythmic light, like a heartbeat. "For 3 nights I've been showing you the problem," he said. "I've shown you that I'm moving, that I'm answering prayers, that breakthroughs are coming. But I've also shown you that many of my children miss their breakthroughs because they're not watching, not recognizing my hand, not tuned in to my frequency. Tonight, I'm going to give you the solution. I'm going to give you the practical steps that will help people position themselves to receive what I've prepared." He knelt beside the glowing impression, and I knelt beside him. "The key," he said, "is something I call the practice of presence. It's not complicated, it's not difficult, but it requires intentionality, it requires discipline, and it requires a willingness to slow down in a world that's constantly trying to speed you up." He placed his hand over the impression, and immediately I felt that connection again, that sense of being plugged into a power source, of being tuned to a frequency that had always been there, but I'd never quite accessed before. "Here's what I want everyone who watches this message to do," he said. "For the next 4 days, starting today right now, I want them to commit to what I'm calling the 30-minute morning meeting. Every morning, before they do anything else, before they check their phone, before they turn on the news, before they start their day, I want them to spend 30 minutes with me, not in religious ritual, not in rote prayer, but in genuine, intentional connection. A vision opened beside us, but this one was different from all the others. It wasn't showing me what could go wrong, it was showing me what could go right. I saw a man, early 40s, stressed, overwhelmed, waking up at 5:30 a.m. His alarm was going off and his first instinct was to reach for his phone. But then he stopped. He remembered the message. He remembered the commitment. Instead of grabbing his phone, he got out of bed, made a cup of coffee, and sat in a chair by the window. Jesus, he said out loud, I'm here. I'm listening. I'm tuning in to your frequency. Show me what you want to show me today. And I watched as he sat there in silence for a moment. Not anxious silence, not uncomfortable silence, but expectant silence, waiting, listening. And then I saw it. A thought dropped into his mind. It wasn't his thought. It was too specific, too clear, too perfectly timed. It was a name, someone he hadn't thought about in months. He pulled out his phone, not to scroll social media, but to send a text to that person. Hey, I know this is random, but you've been on my mind this morning. How are you doing? The vision fast forwarded. I watched as that text message led to a phone call, and that phone call led to a conversation, and that conversation led to a business opportunity that was the exact answer to the prayer he'd been praying for 6 months. Do you see? Jesus asked. The breakthrough was there all along. The opportunity was there all along. But if he hadn't taken those 30 minutes to tune in, if he hadn't received that prompting, if he hadn't acted on it, he would have missed it. Not because I wasn't moving, but because he wasn't positioned to receive what I was giving. The vision shifted, and I saw a woman, mid-30s, single mother, exhausted, doing the same thing, waking up early before her kids, sitting with her Bible and a cup of tea. But she wasn't just reading, she was listening, and as she sat there, she felt a prompting to take a different route to work than she normally took. It seemed random, it seemed insignificant, but she'd committed to the 30-minute morning meeting, and she'd committed to acting on the promptings she received. So she took the different route. And on that route, her car broke down. At first it seemed like a disaster, but then I watched as a man stopped to help her. And that man happened to be a mechanic. And as he was helping her, they started talking, and he mentioned that his company was hiring for an administrative position, and that position paid twice what she was currently making and had the flexible hours she'd been praying for. Her car breaking down, which seemed like a problem, was actually God's orchestration. But if she hadn't been tuned in that morning, if she hadn't received the prompting to take a different route, if she hadn't acted on it, she would have missed the divine appointment. This is how I work, Jesus said, and his voice was filled with excitement. I'm constantly orchestrating circumstances, arranging divine appointments, positioning people and opportunities. But my children miss so many of them because they're not tuned in, they're not listening, they're not watching for my hand. He stood, and I stood with him. The moon was beginning to set now, and the eastern horizon was starting to lighten with the approaching dawn. Here's what the 30-minute morning meeting looks like practically, he said. And I want you to be very specific about this, Jonathan, because people need concrete steps, not vague spiritual concepts. He began to walk around the outcrop as he talked, and I followed, listening intently. First 10 minutes, gratitude and recognition. I want them to start by thanking me for specific things, not generic, thank you for this day prayers, but specific recognition of my hand in their life. Thank you for that conversation yesterday. Thank you for the way you provided that unexpected money. Thank you for the peace I felt in that difficult moment. This practice trains their eyes to see my hand. It tunes them to my frequency. A vision appeared showing dozens of people doing exactly this, and I could see how the practice of recognizing God's hand in past events made them more alert to seeing his hand in present events. Second 10 minutes, listening and receiving. This is the most important part, and it's the part most people skip. I want them to sit in silence, actual silence, and listen, not with their ears, but with their spirit. And I want them to pay attention to the thoughts that come, the names that drop into their mind, the ideas that surface, the promptings they feel. Not every thought is from me, but many are, and the only way to learn to distinguish my voice is to practice listening. Another vision showed a teenager doing this. She was sitting on her bed, eyes closed, just listening. And I watched as a thought came to her. Apologize to your mom. She didn't want to. They'd had a fight the day before, and she felt justified in her anger, but she'd committed to acting on the promptings she received, so she went downstairs and apologized. And that apology opened a conversation that led to her mom sharing something she'd never shared before, a struggle she was going through, and the teenager was able to pray with her mom in a way that brought healing to their relationship. But more than that, I watched as that moment of obedience positioned the teenager for her own breakthrough 3 days later, because God could trust her to act on his promptings. Third 10 minutes, declaration and expectation. I want them to declare out loud what they're believing me for. Not begging, not pleading, but declaring. Jesus, I'm watching for you to move in my finances today. Jesus, I'm expecting you to open a door in my career this week. Jesus, I'm believing you're going to heal this relationship. And then I want them to declare this. I will recognize your hand when you move. I will not dismiss your answers as coincidence. I will give you credit for what you do. Jesus stopped walking and turned to face me, his face serious. This last part is critical, Jonathan, because declaration creates expectation, and expectation creates awareness. When people declare that they're watching for me to move, they actually start watching. They become alert. They notice things they would have otherwise missed. They recognize divine appointments they would have otherwise dismissed. The sky was definitely lightening now, the stars beginning to fade as dawn approached, and I realized that for the first time in 4 nights, I was going to see the sunrise from this outcrop. But there's more, Jesus said. The 30-minute morning meeting is the foundation, but there are 3 other practices I want them to implement over the next 4 days. He held up one finger. Practice 1, the hourly check-in. I want them to set an alarm on their phone to go off every hour, and when it goes off, I want them to take 60 seconds, just 60 seconds, to pause and ask me, what are you doing right now? What am I missing? What should I be paying attention to? This keeps them tuned in throughout the day. It prevents them from getting so caught up in the busyness of life that they miss the divine appointments I'm arranging. Another vision appeared, showing a businessman in a meeting. His phone vibrated with his hourly alarm. He excused himself for a moment, stepped into the hallway, and took 60 seconds to pray. Jesus, what are you doing right now? And as he prayed, he felt a prompting to really listen to what one of his colleagues had been saying in the meeting, something about a personal struggle. He went back into the meeting, and after it ended, he approached that colleague. That conversation led to a friendship that led to a business partnership that became the breakthrough he'd been praying for. Practice 2, the evening review. Before they go to bed each night, I want them to spend 10 minutes reviewing their day, not just thinking about what happened, but specifically looking for my hand. Where did they see me move? What conversations stood out? What coincidences occurred? What promptings did they receive and act on? This practice reinforces the pattern of recognition. It trains their eyes to see me. I watched as a woman sat on her bed with a journal, writing down the moments from her day where she'd seen God's hand, a parking spot that opened up right when she needed it, a text from a friend at the exact moment she was feeling discouraged, an idea that came to her during her morning meeting that solved a problem at work. As she wrote them down, I could see her faith growing, her expectation increasing, her awareness sharpening. Practice 3, the obedience commitment. This is the most challenging one, but it's also the most important. I want them to commit that for the next 4 days. Whenever they receive a prompting that they believe is from me, they will act on it within 24 hours, not eventually, not when it's convenient, within 24 hours. Jesus' voice became more intense. This is where most people miss their breakthrough, Jonathan. They receive the prompting. They recognize it as my voice, but then they hesitate. They overthink. They talk themselves out of it. They wait for a more convenient time. And by the time they finally act, if they act at all, the window is closed. The divine appointment has passed. The opportunity has gone to someone else. A final vision appeared, and this one showed multiple timelines simultaneously. I saw a man receiving a prompting to call someone. In one timeline, he acted immediately. The call led to a conversation that led to an opportunity that changed his life. In another timeline, he hesitated, told himself he'd call later, got busy, and forgot. The opportunity went to someone else. Same prompting, same potential breakthrough, but 2 completely different outcomes based on one factor: immediate obedience. The sun was breaking over the horizon now, sending shafts of golden light across the rocky outcrop. And in that light, Jesus looked more glorious than I'd ever seen him. Not because he was more radiant, but because the natural light was revealing details I hadn't been able to see in the darkness. The texture of his robes, the warmth in his eyes, the smile on his face. "Jonathan," he said, I want you to understand something. Everything I've shown you over these 4 nights, everything I'm asking people to do, it's not about earning my favor. It's not about manipulating me into answering their prayers. It's not about religious performance. It's about positioning. It's about tuning in. It's about being present and aware so that when I move, and I am moving, they recognize it. He walked over to the edge of the outcrop and I joined him. Below us, the valleys were emerging from shadow as the sunlight spread across the landscape. It was breathtakingly beautiful, a visual representation of what he'd been teaching me. The light had always been coming, the sun had always been rising, but only now, in this moment, was it visible. This is what's happening in the lives of everyone who watches this message, he said. The breakthrough has always been coming. I've always been working. The answer has always been on its way. But now, in these next 4 days, it's becoming visible. It's manifesting. It's breaking through into the physical realm. But only those who are watching, only those who are tuned in, only those who are positioned to receive it will actually receive it. He turned to face me and placed both hands on my shoulders. I need you to tell them something very specific, he said. I need you to tell them that today is day 4 of the 7 days, which means they have 4 days left, and I need you to give them a specific deadline. He paused, and his eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. Tell them that 30 days from today, March 20th, 2026, I want them to send you a testimony. I want them to write down what happened when they implemented these practices. I want them to share how they recognized my hand. I want them to tell the story of their breakthrough, because their testimony is going to be the catalyst for someone else's breakthrough. Their story is going to encourage someone else to keep watching, keep believing, keep expecting. The sun was fully above the horizon now, and the entire landscape was bathed in golden light. The rocky outcrop, which had seemed harsh and forbidding in the darkness, was revealed to be beautiful. Every crevice, every formation, every surface catching and reflecting the light in unique ways. This is what I do, Jesus said softly. I take what seems harsh and reveal its beauty. I take what seems dark and flood it with light. I take what seems hopeless and infuse it with possibility. But my children have to be willing to stay through the darkness. They have to be willing to keep watching through the night. They have to be willing to believe that the sun is coming even when they can't see it yet. He removed his hands from my shoulders and stepped back. You've been faithful, Jonathan, he said. You've climbed this mountain 4 nights in a row. You've been willing to see the hard things. You've been willing to receive the difficult messages. You've been willing to be my voice in this hour. And because of your faithfulness, thousands of people are going to receive their breakthrough. Thousands of people are going to recognize my hand. Thousands of people are going to step into what I've prepared for them. He began to fade, but slower this time, as if he was reluctant to leave. Tell them I love them, he said, his voice growing softer as his form became more translucent. Tell them I see them. Tell them I haven't forgotten them. Tell them their prayers have not been in vain. Tell them the wait has not been wasted. Tell them the breakthrough is coming. Tell them to watch. Tell them to be ready. Tell them to recognize my hand. Tell them. His voice faded to a whisper. Tell them they've been marked for this moment. And then he was gone, but the light remained. The sun continued to rise, and the rocky outcrop, which had been the site of 4 nights of intense spiritual encounter, was revealed in the daylight to be even more beautiful than I'd imagined. I stood there for a long time, watching the sun climb higher, feeling the warmth on my face, processing everything I'd seen and heard over the past 4 nights, and I knew with absolute certainty that this message was going to change lives, but it would only change the lives of those who acted on it. So here we are. You've made it through all 4 parts of this message. You've heard what Jesus showed me on that mountain. You've seen the visions. You've heard the warnings. You've received the practical steps. Now the question is, what are you going to do with it? Because here's the truth. You can watch this entire series. You can be inspired by it. You can even believe every word of it. But if you don't act on it, nothing will change. The breakthrough that's waiting for you will go to someone else. The divine appointment that's been arranged for you will be missed. The window that's open right now will close. But if you act, if you commit to the 30-minute morning meeting, if you implement the 3 practices, if you tune in to God's frequency and start watching for his hand, everything can change. Not might change, not could change, will change. So here's what I'm asking you to do. First, make the commitment right now, out loud. Say it. Jesus, for the next 4 days, I commit to the 30-minute morning meeting. I commit to the hourly check-in. I commit to the evening review. I commit to immediate obedience when I receive your promptings. I commit to watching for your hand. I commit to recognizing your answers. I commit to giving you credit when you move. Second, set your alarm right now for tomorrow morning, 30 minutes earlier than you normally wake up. Don't wait. Don't think about it. Do it right now, because if you wait, you'll talk yourself out of it. The enemy will give you 1,000 reasons why you're too busy, too tired, too overwhelmed. Do it now. Third, get a journal or open a note on your phone. You're going to need it for the evening review. You're going to need it to write down the promptings you receive. You're going to need it to document the moments when you see God's hand moving. And you're going to need it to write your testimony on March 20th. Fourth, leave a comment right now telling me you're committing to this. Don't just watch and walk away. Make a public declaration. Say, I'm in. I'm committing to the next 4 days. I'm watching for God's hand. Because that public declaration creates accountability. It strengthens your resolve. It makes it real. Fifth, share this message. I know. Everyone asks you to share their videos. But this is different. This isn't about getting views or growing a channel. This is about saving someone's breakthrough. Think about the people in your life right now who are on the verge of giving up. Think about the people who have been praying and waiting and hoping and are tired. Think about the people who are 3 days away from their breakthrough but don't know it. Share this message with them. Send them the link. Tag them in the comments, because their breakthrough might depend on seeing this message today. Sixth, subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Not because I need subscribers, but because over the next 30 days, I'm going to be sharing testimonies. I'm going to be sharing updates. I'm going to be sharing additional insights that God gives me, and you're going to want to see them. You're going to want to hear the stories of what happens when people implement these practices. You're going to want to be part of this community of people who are watching for God's hand. Now, I need to tell you something important. Over the next 4 days, you're going to face resistance. The enemy is not going to be happy about you implementing these practices. He's going to throw distractions at you. He's going to try to make you oversleep. He's going to fill your mind with doubts. He's going to make you feel foolish for believing that something as simple as a 30-minute morning meeting could make a difference. But here's what I want you to remember. The intensity of the resistance is a sign of the significance of the breakthrough. The enemy doesn't waste ammunition on people who aren't a threat. If you're facing resistance, it means you're close. It means your breakthrough is right around the corner. It means the window is open and he's desperate to keep you from walking through it. So when you face that resistance, and you will, I want you to come back and watch this message again. I want you to remember what Jesus showed me on that mountain. I want you to remember the visions of people who missed their breakthrough because they gave up too soon. I want you to remember that you've been marked for this moment, and I want you to push through. Because 4 days from now, when you look back on this moment, you're going to be so grateful that you didn't give up. You're going to be so grateful that you committed to watching. You're going to be so grateful that you recognized God's hand when he moved. Let me tell you what I've experienced since coming down from that mountain 4 days ago. I've been implementing these same practices I'm asking you to implement, and I've seen God move in ways that have left me speechless. I had a conversation 3 days ago that seemed completely random. Someone I hadn't talked to in years reached out. But during that conversation, they mentioned an opportunity that was the exact answer to a prayer I'd been praying for months. If I hadn't been tuned in during my morning meeting, if I hadn't received the prompting to really listen during that conversation, if I hadn't recognized it as God's hand, I would have missed it. I received a prompting 2 days ago to send an email to someone. It seemed random. It seemed insignificant. But I'd committed to immediate obedience, so I sent it. And that email led to a connection that led to an opportunity that's going to impact thousands of people. But if I'd hesitated, if I'd waited, if I'd talked myself out of it, the window would have closed. This is what happens when you tune in. This is what happens when you watch. This is what happens when you recognize God's hand. And this is what's going to happen for you over the next 4 days if you commit to these practices. Now, I want to address something specific. Some of you watching this are thinking, but Jonathan, I've tried things like this before. I've committed to prayer routines before. I've made declarations before, and nothing changed. Why would this time be different? Here's why. Because this time you're not just praying, you're watching. You're not just asking, you're listening. You're not just hoping, you're expecting. And most importantly, you're tuning in to recognize God's hand when he moves. The difference between this and what you've tried before is awareness. It's recognition. It's the commitment to see God's hand in the ordinary circumstances of your life, not just in the dramatic supernatural manifestations. God has probably been answering your prayers all along. He's probably been moving in your life all along. He's probably been orchestrating circumstances and arranging divine appointments all along. But you've been missing them because you weren't watching for them. You weren't tuned in to recognize them. You were looking for the lightning bolt and missing the mist. But that changes today. That changes right now, because now you know what to look for. Now you know how to tune in. Now you know how to recognize his hand. Let me paint a picture for you of what the next 4 days could look like. Tomorrow morning, you wake up 30 minutes early. You're tired, but you remember the commitment you made. You make your coffee or tea, you sit in your chair, and you begin the 30-minute morning meeting. The first 10 minutes, you practice gratitude and recognition. You thank God for specific things. And as you do, you start to see his hand in places you hadn't noticed before. The second 10 minutes, you sit in silence and listen. At first it feels awkward, your mind wanders, but you keep bringing it back. And then a thought drops in, a name, someone you haven't thought about in months. You write it down. The third 10 minutes, you declare what you're believing God for. You declare that you're watching for his hand. You declare that you will recognize his answers. And as you speak those words out loud, you feel something shift in your spirit. Hope, expectation, anticipation. You go about your day, but you're different, you're more present, you're more aware. Your hourly alarm goes off and you take 60 seconds to check in with God. What are you doing right now? What am I missing? And in one of those check-ins, you feel a prompting. Call that person whose name came to you this morning. You hesitate, it seems random, but you've committed to immediate obedience. So you make the call, and that call leads to a conversation, and that conversation leads to an opportunity, and that opportunity is the answer to the prayer you've been praying for 6 months. That evening, you sit down with your journal and review your day. You write down the moments when you saw God's hand, the parking spot, the conversation, the idea that came to you, the prompting you acted on. And as you write, you realize God has been moving all along. You just weren't watching for it. This pattern repeats for 4 days. And by the end of those 4 days, your life looks different. Not because God suddenly started moving, but because you finally started recognizing his movement. This is what's possible. This is what's available. This is what Jesus showed me on that mountain. But it requires commitment. It requires discipline. It requires a willingness to slow down in a world that's constantly trying to speed you up. So the question is, are you willing? Are you willing to wake up 30 minutes earlier for 4 days? Are you willing to set aside the distractions and tune in to God's frequency? Are you willing to act on the promptings you receive, even when they seem random or insignificant? Are you willing to watch for God's hand in the ordinary circumstances of your life? Are you willing to give him credit when he moves instead of dismissing it as coincidence? If you're truly willing, then I can promise you this: 4 days from now, your life will be different. Not might be different, will be different, because God is moving right now, in this moment, in your life. The question is not whether he's moving. The question is whether you're watching. I'm going to close with this. When I was standing on that rocky outcrop on the 4th morning watching the sun rise, Jesus said something to me that I haven't shared yet. He said, "Jonathan, tell them that I've been waiting for this moment longer than they've been waiting for their breakthrough. Tell them that I've been preparing this for them since before they were born. Tell them that every delay, every disappointment, every closed door has been part of the preparation. Tell them that nothing has been wasted. Tell them that the wait is almost over. Tell them that the next 4 days are the appointed time. Tell them to watch. Tell them to be ready. Tell them that I love them more than they can possibly imagine. And tell them that I'm about to show them just how much." That's the message. That's what he wanted me to tell you. You've been marked, not for judgment, not for punishment, not for more waiting. You've been marked for breakthrough. You've been marked for this moment. You've been marked for the next 4 days. The window is open. The shift is happening. The breakthrough is coming. But you have to watch. You have to be ready. You have to recognize his hand when he moves. So make the commitment, set the alarm, get the journal, leave the comment, share the message. And then on March 20th, 2026, 30 days from today, come back and share your testimony. Tell me what happened. Tell me how you recognized God's hand. Tell me about your breakthrough, because your story is going to encourage someone else. Your testimony is going to strengthen someone else's faith. Your breakthrough is going to be the catalyst for someone else's miracle. This is how the kingdom works. This is how God moves. One breakthrough leads to another. One testimony encourages another. One person's recognition of God's hand helps another person see his hand in their own life. And it all starts with you making a decision right now. So what's it going to be? Are you going to scroll past this message and go back to your normal routine? Or are you going to commit to the next 4 days? Are you going to keep living in the pattern of missing God's movement? Or are you going to tune in and start recognizing His hand? The choice is yours. But I'm telling you, as someone who has seen what Jesus showed me on that mountain, as someone who has witnessed the visions of what happens when people watch versus what happens when they don't, I'm begging you, don't miss this. Don't miss your window. Don't miss your appointed time. Don't miss your breakthrough. You've been marked for this moment. Now watch for it. I'll see you in the comments. I'll see you in the testimonies. I'll see you on the other side of your breakthrough. God bless you. Jesus loves you, and your breakthrough is closer than you think. Watch for it.